Hello, everyone. It's the Book Traveller back with you today, back in Istanbul. Was here a few weeks ago, late at night, but managed to come during the day today. And I'm sat up on the 24th floor of my hotel, looking out over the Sea of Marmara out to my left-hand side here, with Istanbul stretching out along the coastline over my left shoulder. A bit of a cloudy day today, a bit cool outside actually, and I was hoping to go and find a nice spot to bring you another reading. But I've just popped outside. It's a bit chilly, so I've gone and got myself a coffee and decided to sit in the comfort of the hotel here and read you another chapter of The Sanctuary. Just 2 days ago here in Istanbul, there was a series of earthquakes, the strongest one measuring 6.2 on the Richter scale. So I've not felt any tremors since I've been here, so hopefully there won't be any aftershocks during this next reading. But if you see me exit very quickly, then that's what's happening. So fingers crossed. Anyway, here we are. So back to the sanctuary. We're getting through it now, nearly just over halfway through, I would say, and we're going to carry on with chapter 19. My fears had faded by the morning, and the night's dreams had gone with them, driven back by the soft, warm light flooding the room. How easy it is for gentle sunlight, birdsong, and fresh morning air to reveal that all the terrors of the night before were nothing but shadows on the wall. By the time I got downstairs, Francis was already lacing his boots, and Joanna was stirring something in a glass, a drink she had prescribed by the doctor here, the vitamins she needed for pregnancy. They wished me luck as I left. I hitched a lift back towards the lodge, and I was dropped next to one of the footpaths leading there. The forest on either side was bursting with energy of spring. A few of the trees that had seemed leafless just a few days ago were packed with tightly folded buds. One tree had exploded into blossom already, like a firework frozen at its most beautiful moment. I counted 9 different burr-calls as I went. Pemberley was sitting outside the lodge, alone this time, and in a better mood. "Sailor Ben!" "Today you come Painter Ben." He was sipping coffee from a small cup before him. "Drink?" I accepted. It was good coffee, dark and bitter. "From here?" I asked. He nodded, and I marvelled that this island could support so many wonders. "Come, I've got a room already set up." He stood and led me inside, along the corridor, then upstairs. The walls were lined with dark, shadowy portraits I presumed had been Fellingham's. Pemberley himself was certainly uninterested in telling me anything about them. Halfway along the landing he opened a door. "Here all right?" The room was a stone cube, about 30 feet on each side. The walls were grey, and it would have been a dark and forbidding chamber were it not for the fact that at the far end the roof had been torn off from left to right, stretching about 10 feet into the room far from the far wall. 3 unadorned pillars stood at the open end, supporting nothing. One had a determined green frond climbing towards the top. The floor at the end of the room was stained with rain, and even more intriguing were the drains where it met the wall, and a slight tilt halfway across, as though the place had been built to remain open in all weathers. The rooms inhabited half held a case of books, a dresser, and a small Spartan writing table with a chair. As I looked around towards the door, I noticed a bed in the nearest corner. Not even a bed, really. A thick tatami mat on the floor, with what looked like a hard block at one end of it. Beside it was a long, plain broom. "Is this—" "I sleep here, yes, but it's where I think, too. You did say you wanted something that got to the heart of the painting subject. This room fulfills the brief nicely. Something new made out of something old." "Do you sleep here through the winter?" "It didn't seem possible. The trees bring the island the warmth it needs, Ben. Besides, it very rarely snows more than halfway into the room." By now, I could hardly tell if he was joking or not. I wouldn't have put it past him to have dragged the mat in here from a luxurious chamber down the hall, just to amuse himself or fool me. Anyway, I like it. Will it do? I looked around. Well, yes, this will be fine in the mornings, with the sun on the other side of us. Enough light, none of it direct. Where do I stand? I showed him a spot, pulled a chair to it and gestured him to sit, and told him the easel would sit on the flagstone next to him here. He expressed surprise that it would be so close, and I told him the name of the method I would be using to paint him. Sight size. Exactly. I view you and the painting side by side from a distance. You sit here with the easel just beside you, then I move back to here, a spot a few meters towards the door, to see the overall look of you from there. Then I return to make my marks on the canvas. I'm viewing you and the painting side by side at a distance. It gives me an impression of the whole painting at once. And this helps you how? It gives you a picture very true to nature. So often clients think they want an exact portrait. If I did that, I'd end up with a hyper-real painting, so I might lose you who you are. But if I translate what I see from over here into the terms of the painting, I get an image that is impressionistic but alive. It's more really you than a photo. So it's a trick. It's the real you from a distance, but a trick up close. Close enough, and it dissolves into chaos. Sounds like most of us. He barks with pleasure at his insight. I'll need to leave the easel in the building, so I'm not carrying it back and forth. You can leave it in the corner. Let's start then. Today I'll just sketch, if that's all right. Thought you already had sketches in that little book of yours. I swallowed. Formal sketches. Fine. Where did you learn this stuff anyway? Florence. Lovely place. I met Kara there. He had naturally adopted a rather striking pose in the chair, leaning slightly forward, and I requested he hold it. He did so, but asked me to tell him about the circumstances of our meeting. That meeting in Florence had been chance, but at the end of the first evening Kara had told me how much longer she was staying in the villa on the city outskirts, and we arranged to meet the following night. Her aunt was visiting for her health, and she was happy to let her niece have the run of the city after an early supper. We spent our evenings walking up and down the narrow streets, trading comments with the wandering salesmen, admiring their goods. Sometimes we would stop in one of the cramped bars for a drink or a game of dice. Whatever we did, we were constantly talking about art, about work, about the shape of the world to come. If this sounds serious, it wasn't. We were coining new jokes and in-jokes all the time, building our love like a stack of cards. She was on the verge of graduating, and her plans then were chiefly about her ambitions in life. She spoke of climbing through the world, climbing to safety. It was the image that told me the most about where she had come from. Pemberley grunted with approval at that. Kara had no parents since the age of 5, and I always assumed this had been the motor that powered her worldly ambitions. She had grown up with her aunt, poor, very poor, she had hinted, and when she had been old enough to start working, she had worked. The trip to Florence had been paid for entirely by her. Kara had stayed devoted to her aunt until she had died, a few years after Florence, and since then her ambition had been boundless. My own diagnosis was that she was out for revenge on a world which had treated her only family so poorly, but whenever I asked, she insisted it was simply a matter of security. That was the dominant difference between us, I explained. It didn't matter at first, because we each wanted the other to succeed, and we both dreamed a world greatly improved. But our methods of getting there seemed different. Kara was searching for a unique, elite project like the one she'd found here. I wanted more of a collective struggle, though I was careful not to criticize the island as I had yesterday. I understood it so much better now, after all. Later, after leaving the room, I was not sure how I had been induced to speak so freely, but I felt safe, as though I was with a friend. Pemberley kept his face perfectly still as I spoke, but he maintained an air of intense curiosity, and I saw again what Kara, with her hopes for the future of the world, saw in this man and this place. It seemed to me that elements of my own face entered the sketch I produced. I drew Pemberley's eyes rounder, his cheekbones more prominent. When I looked at it later, I felt our two faces had become muddled somehow, and I had produced neither of us faithfully, but a third person, borrowing DNA from both. It was a mistake I had never made before, and it was oddly discomforting. Once I had finished speaking, Pemberley waited for a minute or so, then spoke. You know, the work we are doing here is for the young. They're the only generation who have ever mattered. As a species, we're not good for much past the age of 35, I'd say. 35? You can't mean that. I'm quite serious. After that, we amass, we hoard, we become dragons, sitting on piles of gold and denying those who come after us. Age is detestable, Ben. Don't ever get old. It's surprising to hear someone older speaking that way. He shrugged. All my most important work I'd done by 35. If I died then, it might have made the world a little less unequal, but here we are. I'd better do my most important work quickly then. I'm 33. He shrugged once more. You have time. Do you ever encounter hostility from older people for that attitude? I don't meet any. The island is too young. It's getting younger all the time, too. We've had so many births. The average age has come down in the last 3 years. I couldn't help remembering the last old person I'd seen in Freeborn. You've reminded me of someone I met on the way here. Oh, yes. He was looking down at his fingernails, distracted momentarily, and as I recounted the story, trying to seem nonchalant about the old man's account of his son being killed on Pemberley soil, he kept on examining his hands. Once I'd finished, he merely shook his head, sorrowfully. The young man was poaching the birds. One of my rangers gave chase, and the young man fired at him. The ranger had no choice but to shoot back. The poacher was killed, of course, and the ranger handed over to the police. They decided there was no case to answer. A great waste. I suppose when you're doing something as ambitious as this, not everyone is going to like it. He nodded, and I was emboldened. It seems a shame Thomas didn't like it either, the writer. He nodded again, gave grave, then returned his head to its former position, making sure I could keep sketching him. I found that very considerate. Poor Thomas. He had the best possible treatment in his final hours. Nobody could have been tested, examined, monitored more closely. By the end, he almost seemed not want to live. Problems from the mainland following him here, perhaps. We can't save everyone. It was no good. He was so convincing, but none of it mattered, except my next question. I was wondering if you'd heard from Kara lately. I paused to control my breathing. I haven't seen her. She hasn't phoned the island. I know you said she knows I'm here, but I paused unwillingly to accuse him of lying. I just want to speak to her. She sends me a daily digest, Ben. Would you like to see it? It was so convincing. I was on the brink of saying, no, that won't be necessary. I believe you, of course. And I had to force myself not to. I would, yes. Wait there. He left the room, came back with a pile of memos in his hands. I looked at the topmost one, dated yesterday, and recognized her handwriting, her turn of phrase. He reached out a thick finger and turned the page over. There was her signature. She's looking forward to seeing you, Ben. Very much. I don't think you're in trouble, especially. He smiled. Lupine. That was it then. Bianca had been lying to me, trying to deceive me for reasons known to herself. What did you think was going on? I don't know. I just had this mad fear. It wasn't mad. It wasn't that she was missing. Are you sure someone didn't suggest that notion to you, Ben? There was an edge to Pemberley's voice. I understood from it that if I named Bianca, she would be in deep trouble. I would ask her about it later. No, nobody at all. Purely my paranoia, I assure you. His face cleared, and he ditched the pile of paper on the desk and resumed his seat before me. How's the process going, then? Getting cramped yet, drawing these features? I told him it was going well and thanked him for his consideration, but I was so awash with relief, and we were on such good terms now that I felt I could ask for something different, and here I made my mistake. I was wondering one thing. Do you have any pictures of yourself, maybe as a young man, even as a boy, that might show me how your face has developed? No, I don't. In the instant, the set of his features, that confident, stern mask, vanished, replaced by a curious blankness. Is there really nothing? It can't. It can be anything. A family photo is best, of course, because then we can see how your parents shaped you. If I was honest, these were not strict requirements for a successful portrait, but I felt emboldened to suggest it by how enjoyable our conversation had been so far. I don't have any. That was all he said, but the tone in which he spoke made it clear he would discuss the matter no further. A few seconds later, he surveyed his watch and stood. I think that's all we have time for today. Come back in a couple of days. Maybe you'll be able to get painting then. Before I could adjust or even apologize, I'd been ushered into the corridor and the door was firmly closed behind me. As I left the house, my face hot, I replayed the moment of clumsiness again and again, cursing myself, and as I went, I risked to look back at the lodge. In the room I now recognized, open to the sky, I thought I saw a glimmer of movement, a retreat behind one of the cool pillars, but I couldn't say for sure. When I reached the hub, I moved to the library, up a short flight of steps, and into shadow. Like so many other buildings here, it seemed to have been designed to sprout from the earth. The entrance hall was high and Spartan and contained nothing but a central desk, surrounded by empty marble floor. The lighting was gloomy and had no visible source. The only sign of the place's function was a tall glass deck around one of the upper stories, beneath which I could make out shelves of books. But even the windows up there had been topped with a roof of overgrown with greenery, tendrils of it tumbling over the edges and swaying against the glass in the breeze. Behind the desk stood a woman. She was young, with soft auburn hair and gentle, round features, and wore a deep blue set of overalls. "You must be Ben." I was starting to dislike the way everyone here knew my name. "Is there anything in particular you're seeking?" "Not really. I'm just looking around." "Well, we have a section for general readers here." The librarian turned sideways to retrieve a map, and I realized she was pregnant, like my new neighbor, Joanna. I thought so anyway. There was just enough looseness in her clothes to leave the fact in doubt. "Can I search myself?" "Of course." The means of searching was the microfilm. These were the newspapers Bianca had been proudly explaining about, her own contribution to this place. The librarian gave me brief, uninterested instructions in the use of the machine, and I keyed in a code to unlock the huge Isle of Reels before returning to her desk. Ordinarily, she explained, I would ask her what I wanted, but her condition? She gestured to her distended stomach. We assured each other I would manage without her. The reels were stored along one of the building's long, high aisles, stretching back hundreds of feet into the gloom. There was a huge book of yellowed paper, a guide to which papers were stored where. From long experience on the mainland, I knew John Pemberley would bring hardly any results, but now I had two new names to research. Neither of them might be here, of course. Bianca's purchase of the archive might not include more recent copies, which he had said had only been imported in the last few months. I checked the notebook, still in my pocket, for Thomas's surname. Thomas Candler. Thomas Candler, writer. I tried hunting for him in one of the city's main papers, remembering the address in the front of his notebook, and the rough dates. He must have come here. Missing people of his class usually made at least a few headlines. Before long, here he was. He had written a couple of books on the world's last wildernesses, had worked for anti-capitalist groups, protest organizations too. Around 7 months ago, he had been reported missing. His friends and family had issued tearful appeals. He stared out from the screen, arrogant and youthful. None of the people wondering about him on the mainland knew he was dead. I could see why he would have applied to live on the island, hoping for a scoop. He must have run away from his old life and come here. I felt a prickle across my neck. Hadn't I done the same thing? William Steenson. This time I searched the yellow book for one of the papers local to here, and then went into the long, dark alley of reels again. If he really had been a poacher, there would have been some record, an arrest, a charge, unless he had been entirely beyond the law. When had Steenson died? The old man had said it was a couple of years, and the local paper only published once a week. This search was faster, and before long a second face looked out at me from the page. According to this report, from the time of his death 2 years ago, William Steenson had been no poacher, but an ecologist and ornithologist, killed in a boating accident about 50 miles from here. Of course, Pemberley's account made sense if Steenson's ecological work was a front for poaching. That certainly made more sense than anything else. And if the Rangers had been fired on, what could they do but fire back? Perhaps the location of the death had been changed to cover things up, give him and his family some respectability in death. I was inclined to believe Pemberley's version of events, to give him the benefit of the doubt. He was frightening, imposing, but no murderer. "Can I help you further?" The librarian was at my side, soundlessly. I was trying to find out a little more about this place. A foolish lie, given what she could clearly see on the panel before me. She smiled, a beautiful smile really, one of great innocence. "I'm sure John will tell you anything you need to know." That's the end of chapter 19. So, what we're going to find out, a little slurp of coffee, and we'll continue with chapter 20 straight away. Nice, Turkish coffee. Chapter 20. I spent the afternoon walking in the southeast of the island, near the area Thomas had marked in his notebook as being the site of 41, whatever that was. I found nothing that justified his paranoia. The path twisted around at various points, but it was merely following the landscape on either side. The trees overhead scattered the sun and made navigation difficult. At the point he had drawn, the woodland was impenetrably thick, with sharp thorns. I thought I saw a fence in the distance once, but it might have been nothing but a curtain of creepers. The rest of the day I spent sketching in the studio and leafing through the notebook. The more closely I examined it, the less I trusted Thomas. He had written in a list of Pemberley's benefits and kindnesses, then undercut each one with a baseless speculation about what Pemberley might have wanted in exchange. Mad Thomas, Francis's nickname for him, seemed fairer than ever. When it was time for dinner, I travelled to the hub alone, and after my stupid, tactless questions to Pemberley this morning, was unsurprised to find myself off the top table again. There was no announcement from Pemberley before the dinner, except a few words asking us to wait afterwards, so he could speak at greater length. I sat quietly with residents I didn't know. I had been there for 3 days now, and Cara was still not here. Shouldn't she be with me to hear whatever this announcement was? If she was on the mainland, why hadn't Bianca been able to find her? And why was she in touch with Pemberley and not with me? Good evening, everybody. The meal was over, I realised, and Pemberley was at the podium. Everybody present in this room, everyone watching from nearby, by the links we've set up, welcome to the end of another day in our sanctuary, another day in paradise. He inhaled, and his whole frame swelled. We have achieved so much here, my friends, so much. We tread lightly on the earth. Our farming teams grow extraordinary foods from the air itself. The planet's beleaguered species flock here for safety. I'm proud to say that, thanks to the remarkable efforts of Angela Knight, we have completed our biodiversity bank of almost every species on this earth. A cheer at this. We destroyed the parasites our forebears introduced here. Another cheer. We have done so much. There have been doubters, cynics, but we have proven them wrong. Once again I was aware of Thomas's notebook in my pocket, and felt great shame to have entertained those thoughts. But it was not enough. You know that each day the planet hastens towards its grave. Many of you have asked what more we can do. We advocate, we publicise, but the fact remains. Each day, countless more of our fellow beasts die, thanks to one species. There was some boos at this, as the mainlanders shipwrecking the entire world. So tonight I want to tell you about the next phase. For us to show the world what we can do, I want us to prove this community can stand by itself, that we can live good lives, abundant lives without destruction. Where they see limitation, we will approach the truest possible manifestation of life on Earth. So this is my announcement. In 2 weeks' time, we will close the gates of this island and we will become truly self-sufficient. No new imports, no extra resources pillaged from elsewhere, just us, together, making it work. He was talking about closing the tunnel. Bianca had shown me on the first day here, about closing it for good, truly cutting the island off. I looked around, startled, hoping to find some of the confusion and shock. I felt reflected in the faces around me. I found none. The eyes of my dining companions shone, and they cast disbelieving looks of happiness at each other. Pemberley continued, "Now, we can only do this with everyone's consent. If anyone here wants to leave, then you may. Crowns for convoy will be put into your purse. Many of you may have reasons to want to return to the mainland, although I confess I can't think of any." A ripple of laughter. "This is a trial, too. We're going to do it for a short spell, and then, if it works, carry on. But if you do stay, I promise you this. We will create a new world on this ship of stone, and you will inherit it sooner than you think. And now, ladies and gentlemen, if you step outside, I will show you the proof that we can do anything." He stepped down from the podium, and the gleam of the spotlight vanished from his polished scalp. Applause flooded the room, then chatter. I listened to my neighbours eagerly asserting that they would stay here no matter what. The doors at the end had opened, and we streamed out into the fresh evening air. The central space of Hub was filling. The island's residents covered the grass slopes and the surrounding plateau, but the middle was left empty, with a path leading through it to the edge. Pits of fire stood around, ready for the cool of night. For a second I remembered being at the circus as a boy, and the thought of the ringmaster sinister and brilliant. I walked to a point at the top of the circle, where the path met the hub. Pemberley was already there, with Angela Knight and Munro, the head of security, as well as Bianca. He nodded at me. "That was a wonderful speech," I said. He looked sideways at me. "Hold your praise, Ben." There was a pause, then Munro spoke up. "Are you going to tell us what we're standing around for, John?" Pemberley merely grinned at us and let Knight speak for him. "You'll see, Alan." The circle fell silent, I looked around. There must have been 4,000 of us standing there, experts and apprentices and healers and engineers, all the people who had made this place real, and me. John stepped forward into a patch of light and raised his hands for silence. Unseen microphones amplified his voice. My friends, he had spoken these words loud for attention, and lowered his voice again. My friends, I promised you remarkable sights if you stayed with me. As those of you who have been with me for some time now, I like to make good on my promises. Please, if you will, welcome the newest recruit to our island life. He turned and gestured past us into the darkness. Something was approaching down the marked path to the middle of the arena. There were a few screams of shock and delight from the people right by it, but nobody else could see what it was before it passed the fire pits at the end of the path. Then and only then did the rest of us see what was walking into the centre of the circle. At its side, dwarfed by it, were two attendants who gently tugged it with the aid of ropes and spoke to it in a language I did not know. It was young, I gathered later, although I can't imagine how much larger a fully grown one would be. Female, too. I learned later that these ones all had tusks, whether male or female. It stood there and issued a small cry. Then the only sound in the entire circle of 4,000 people was the flickering of the flames around the edge. Bianca was the first to speak. Is it real? Is it made? What is it? We made it, Pemberley said. We made it, and it's only the beginning. That was when the cheering began, a great ragged cry from 4,000 throats as it looked warily around at the throng behind the fires. The elephant raised its trunk and joined the chorus. Later, a bonfire was lit in the spot where it had stood, and we gathered in the flames in the dark. I felt drunk. How did he do it? I asked. Either he bred it and kept it secret on the mainland estate, or he's cloned it, or something else. But how did we keep it secret? I have no idea. Bianca was the only one who had not remained astonished for long by the sight of the elephant. She had seemed almost repelled by it, in fact. How is it being raised? Animatronic costumes, I guess, or disguises. It probably thinks it's being raised by more of its own kind. It thinks it has proper parents, she shrugged. Probably the best it doesn't know. A secret elephant. He really is a god. Don't let him hear you. It'll go to his head. I laughed and Bianca glanced at me. It's a choice, being here. You do know that, don't you? You have a choice. I couldn't see what I did. I couldn't see that I did. I had to wait for Kara. Pemberley had said she would be back before long, after all. As for Bianca's phone call to the mainland, she simply hadn't phoned the right office. She was unworldly enough to get the wrong impression and cling to it. I could not dispel those doubts entirely, those shreds of cloud on the horizon, but I had been wrong about such feelings before. I would be wrong again this time. I must have faith that I was wrong. The fire in front of us was burning higher than ever, and as the breeze shifted, its heat was driven towards us. A small team of islanders were feeding it with broken planks of wood, and the new tongues of flame jumped up to investigate them, bright and welcoming and obliterating. I had a momentary vision then of the whole island in flames. I couldn't say why, and shivered, even in the driving heat. In my pocket, the notebook Thomas had kept felt as leathery and as rough as an elephant's skin had looked. This place was perfect. The evidence of my eyes was all around me, and yet here I held the one piece of solid evidence from someone who believed it to be hell. And that is the end of chapter 20 and the end of part 2 of the book. Book 3 next, titled Sea Change, will be the next reading from wherever that may be. Hope you're enjoying the readings with the Book Traveller. See you next time.